Good day, everyone, and welcome to Psychological First Aid, caring for others in times of crisis. Psychological first aid is actually the intervention of choice whenever there is a crisis or emergency situation. Okay, so let's see. Okay, but before anything else, I'd just like to know your expectations. Now, think about your expectations in this topic. What do you want to know about psychological first aid? Right? And let's see. Now, the learning outcomes. At the end of this training course, all participants should be able to discuss the concepts and principles of psychological first aid and then identify the steps and strategies in conducting PFA and also describe the role of PFA providers in crisis situations. Now, this psychological first aid discussion is divided into five sessions. First is the understanding PFA, next, identifying the effects of crisis, and then providing PFA. This is where you know the techniques, how to provide PFA, and then caring for yourself and for your colleagues. And then lastly, you're going to practice what you have learned. Okay, so let's start for the first session, understanding psychological first aid. But first, I just want to know, what's your impression about psychological first aid? What comes to your mind when you hear psychological first aid? Since this is the first time that you've heard about these words, no, yung term na tinatawag na psychological first aid. Okay, so just think about it. And later on, let's check if those things that you have thought really compares to the description of what is psychological first aid all about. Now, what is PFA? According to Sphere in 2011 and the Interagency Standing Committee in 2007, PFA is a humane, supportive response to a fellow human being who is suffering and who may need support. So meaning, makatao, no? Makataong tulong sa mga taong nangangailangan. So napakaganda ng pag tinagalog mo yung definition ng PFA. And it involves non-intrusive practical care and support. So hindi ka nangingialam. And you assess needs and concerns of those individual who experience a crisis event. And then you also help people to address basic needs, especially kung mga disaster na pinag-uusapan like food, water. PFA also involves listening but not pressuring people to talk. So walang pilitan dito. And then you also comfort people and helping them to feel calm and help people connect to information, services, and social supports. And also PFA involves protecting people from further harm because these people who experience crisis has already been harmed. So ikaw dapat you would protect them. You would not induce another harm to these people. Now, it is also important to know what PFA is not para maalis natin yung mga misconception about psychological first aid. So first, PFA, it is not something only professionals can do. So meaning kahit mga estudyante, high school students, no, they can provide PFA as long as they have proper training. And it is not professional counseling. So let's not mix PFA with counseling if you are used to providing counseling, so ibahin natin ang approach pagdating sa PFA. And PFA is not psychological debriefing. So meaning there's no detailed discussion of the distressing event. And debriefing is actually a formal group session, while ang PFA pwedeng one-on-one lang and you can do it informally. And PFA is not asking people to analyze what happened or put time and events in order. It's because they are uh, highly emotional. You cannot ask people to do this for you. And also remember that PFA involves being available to listen to people's story. It is not pressuring people to tell you their feelings or reactions to an event. So if they don't want to talk about it, then it's fine. You're going to accept it as it is. Just respect the person's decision. Okay. Now, PFA is actually backed up by research. If you're going to search it on Google, you will find a lot of literatures um, about the effectivity or efficacy of PFA because of these five evidence-based principles. These are safety, connectedness, hope, calming, self, and community efficacy. Why safety? Diba? Every survivor, ang kanyang main concern is safety. Safety of himself or herself and also the safety of her loved ones, his loved ones. No? You cannot really give help to the person no, who is in need if there is safety concern. So kailangan ma-feel niya that he is already safe. Okay, with PFA, we're going to provide that sense, that feeling of being safe from harm. Okay, not just physically, but also psychologically. Okay, and then also connectedness. Diba? A disaster and emergency has the potential to disconnect everyone, just like what happened, di ba, nung pandemic. We were all disconnected by practicing social distancing. So we are not allowed to gather despite of the heavy feelings like halimbawa may no, loss because of the COVID-19. So you cannot really empathize with people by embracing them, hugging them, just like what we used to do prior to pandemic. Kasi bawal nga. So nagkaroon ng disconnection. Or some people were not able to see each other for a long time dahil na-isolate or na-quarantine or even any disaster noon. Minsan na-disconnect tayo because of loss of signals. No? So what do we do? So of course, we try to be innovative no in just to remain connected by using technology perhaps, 'di ba? Kaya nga nauso noon yung mga social media, nag-trending, 'di ba? Because of just to feel that we are still connected despite of what is happening no, during the pandemic. And also PFA promotes hope, okay? Kasi people who experience a tragic loss will certainly lose some degree of hope. So PFA, tayo magbabalik sa kanya unti-unti that hope na at least he has something to look forward to in the future. Okay? And also, PFA is for calming. So meaning we will try to stabilize the person's emotions when we conduct PFA, especially those who are highly emotional or mga nagre-react because of what happened. And of course, lastly, yung self and community efficacy. And everyone, no, kahit they experience a lot of loss in their life, they still have that strength, no, that they have to identify. With PFA, we will help them identify ano pa yung tira sa kanila no, na strengths and resources to help himself. And of course, yung presence ng community resources, kung ano pa yung meron doon. So we'll identify that. So again, these are the five evidence-based principles of PFA. Now, why PFA? Why do we do PFA? Because people do better over the long term if they one feel safe, connected to others, calm, and hopeful. Diba? These are the things that included sa five evidence-based principles. And if they have access to social, physical, and emotional support. And lastly, if they can regain a sense of control by being able to help themselves. Okay? Kasi minsan sa mga trauma, yun ang nawawala, yung sense of control. Now, para kanino ang PFA? PFA is for very distressed people who were recently exposed to a serious stressful event. Those siguro who experienced like accident or loss or yung anything no na talagang it create a very serious stressful reaction to a person to the point na nagkakaroon ng distress. Okay? And we can also provide PFA to adults and children as long as a child is able to communicate. So pwede na siyang bigyan ng PFA. Now remember that not everyone who experience a crisis event will need or want PFA. So pag ganun nangyari, do not force help on those who don't want it, but make yourself available and easily accessible to those who may want your support. Now, kailan ba ginagawa ang PFA? Okay? Accordingly, PFA, we can provide PFA upon first contact with very distressed people, usually immediately following an event. So immediately after an event, no? Wala naman sinabing ano, kung kailan ba, a day after or 1 hour after, basta following and immediately following an event. Or sometimes it can take a few days or weeks after, especially if place is unreachable, no? Kasi baka mamaya may mga obstacles sa daan, like may mga landslides or walang transportations available. So you're the first person to arrive in the area. Okay, so you can conduct PFA. Now, of course, there are people who will need more advanced support than PFA alone. So meaning hindi lang PFA ang kailangan niya mas ano pa, mas higher level of intervention like people with serious life-threatening injuries. Of course, kasi may medical na pangangailangan, no, medical needs, kung kailangan mo na i-attend doon, like yung mga first aid, medical first aid. So, aside from PFA, dapat kasama yun, yung medical first aid. And then for people so upset, they cannot care for themselves or their children. Ito yung mga disoriented na, they are not in touch with the reality, so baka hindi na effective. Okay? Kapag PFA ang binibigay. So, kailangan na to higher intervention or those people na who may hurt themselves either to a self-harm or suicide. So, ibang level of intervention na yan, very specific na yan, and technical. And people who may hurt or endanger the lives of others, especially yung mga assaultive na, no? So, medyo homicidal na yung mga nakiisip nila. So, they need other intervention aside from PFA. Now, just to sum up for our first part, okay, remember the definition of PFA. PFA is a humane, supportive response to a fellow human being who is suffering and who may need our support. And PFA is designed for very distressed people who were recently exposed to a serious stressful event, either children or adult. And remember that we can provide PFA upon first contact with very distressed people, usually immediately following an event or sometimes a few days or weeks after. And PFA is backed up by research, which has five evidence-based principles, which are safety, calmness, connectedness, self and community efficacy, and hope. And that's all about our first part, understanding psychological first aid. I hope you already have a glimpse, no, or an idea and what is PFA all about. Okay.